From the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased joining me from the US, Zeke Camusio. Zeke, thank you very much for being here with me on the show today. The way I love to do it, as I was explaining to you, is I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves. So tell us a bit more about your background, your journey, and what you're currently up to, and then we can start the discussion from there. So the floor is yours.
Of course, of course. Yeah, thank you for having me. Yes, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life in the tech space. Um, I had a few different businesses. Last one was a marketing agency that was acquired in 2015. And my background is in economics and statistics, so I always gravitated towards the analytics and the data driven decision making aspect of it, helping my clients look at performance, understand what's working, what isn't working, what to do about it, how to measure performance, and so on. Um, and yeah, 4 years ago I started Data Speaks, which is an AI platform that helps marketers understand what's driving their conversions, revenue, so they can invest in the right channels, campaigns, and make the most out of every dollar they invest in ads.
Great, and thank you again, Zeke, for being here with me today. So the first thing, which when you were mentioning about your background, that um, kind of attracted me to ask you. So you come from a background in economics, and of course, you have the mix of data science and marketing also as well. So, what do you think is the biggest misconceptions that usually marketers have about, like, you know, anything which is data driven? Of course, machine learning, AI, of course.
Yeah, misconceptions. I think that the the main challenge, there are two main challenges that I see. One of them is not being clear on what to optimize for. So there's a lot of metrics, and some of them are not really aligned with the objectives of the company. So we could have, for example, somebody running your social media saying, we doubled the number of likes or views, and maybe that translates into conversions, maybe it doesn't. So I think that's one of the most important things that a business needs to do. Figure out what's our vision, what are the metrics that help us track how much progress we're making towards our objectives, and then communicate that to the different teams. So, for example, if you are running social media, what it is that you should be optimizing for. And the reason for that is that often, if you optimize for metric A, you're going to be maybe getting worse results for metrics B and C and D. So it needs to be clear what it is that you optimize for. Are you going to be trying to maximize your profit, your margins, your revenue? That's really important. And I think the second one has more to do with uh, the building a habit around reviewing data, making data driven decisions. So you could have all the data in the world, but if you don't have a recurring meeting, say every week or every month, where you look at the metrics that you already agreed upon, you're going to be reviewing, and look at what worked, what didn't work, what we learned from it, and how are we going to do things different moving forward. It's really important to have that, because otherwise you're going to have all this data flowing your way, and it's going to be basically useless, if you don't have a regular cadence to make decisions. So I think it's more than misconceptions. I think a lot of the time is a lack of clarity on what it is that you need to be measuring, and a lack of process to analyze that data on a regular basis.
So Zeke, if you, and I know you, when I was preparing for the episode, you talk a lot about, the attribution challenge and the
Mhm.
gaps that exist over there. So from your perspective, uh, you mentioned some of the things now, but like if you can break down also like into more details these gaps, like, and what is like the one problem that you think it's like should be the top priority for marketers when it comes to the attribution.
Yeah, so attribution is absolutely essential. And what attribution means is that you want to understand what marketing activities lead to what business outcomes. So let's say, for example, you have $1 million in your bank account at the end of the month, and you ran, let's say, three channels, LinkedIn ads, email, and let's say Google ads, right? Um, you need to know how much of that $1 million was contributed to by each of those three players. And that happens all the time, right? Like we do a number of different things, then we get an outcome, and we don't really know how much influence each one had. Therefore, it's impossible for us to determine whether we should be doing more of A or B or C. So that's a huge issue, because 54% of all the marketing budgets in the United States, at least, is towards online ads. And as marketers, we don't really have great tools to track their return on investment. So we're investing more than half of our budget on something that we can track, and that's obviously a huge problem, right? And what are the options we have? One is we can look at the advertising platforms to see what they tell us, or we can use something like Google Analytics. Neither of those is really a solution. Why is that? Well, Google Analytics uses last click attribution. So if somebody found you on, say, an Instagram ad, then they clicked on one of your emails, then they searched for your brand on Google, then they came to your website and purchased. The Google will give the credit to that last click, right? Ignoring everything that happened prior to that. And it's going to lead you to overinvest in that last channel and underinvest in what creates customer awareness, which is, the first few channels in the customer journey. Excuse me, customer journey. Um, and it's very similar for advertising platforms, where essentially each one is telling you, hey, somebody saw my ad, therefore I drove the sale. There are a couple of issues with that. In that case, your email platform is going to claim the sale, Facebook or Instagram in this case, or Google, and you didn't get three sales, you got one sale. So these different tracking systems don't really talk to each other. So as a result, as marketers, um, we if we make decisions based on that data, and if you add to that the fact that pixels that are tracking conversions are blocked by ad blockers about 40% of the time. The fact that they don't talk to each other, the fact that they're measuring essentially whether or not somebody saw an ad, but not the incremental number of sales that you're getting from running ads. um, all these issues make it so, one, you you just don't trust your data because it's wrong, and you just go with your gut. And that's obviously not a very good approach. Or even worse, you have a false sense of confidence in the data that you use to make decisions, and then you don't get the results you expect. So that's in a gist the problem, and the the reason why we exist is because we believe marketers deserve better and they deserve to make good decisions with confidence.
Now, the natural question that would come, Zeke, what's the solution for this? So how I get it. I'm spending a lot of money, different channels. Each platform is giving me different data, and I don't know really what's happening, where I'm getting these clients from. So, what's the solution?
Yeah. So essentially, you have two possible solutions. One is called multi touch attribution, and the other one is called media mix modeling. Multi-touch attribution is where rather than using third-party pixels like the Facebook ads pixel, Google ads pixel, Google Analytics pixel, you use your own first-party tracking. And what that allows you to do is essentially say, rather than getting blocked by ad blockers and privacy settings 40% of the time, it's gonna work, every time. And the beauty of that is that it allows you to track individual points in the customer journey. So that's really useful to understand. People, for example, like find you on YouTube with this ad, and then they see this other ad, and then they do this, and then this, and then this. So it's very good from a qualitative perspective to understand what the customer journey looks like. Now, it's not useful in terms of understanding the return on investment that you're getting for each one of them. And why is that? Well, uh, so we talked about Google Analytics and ad platforms using last click attribution. If you have a multi-touch attribution solution, what it's going to do is essentially it's going to say, there's like 3 channels in this customer journey. Let's just split, in 3. 33% credit goes to the first one, same to the second one, same to the third one. Of course, that's from a scientific perspective, that doesn't make any sense. It's arbitrary, and it can never lead to understanding the actual impact of each player in the journey. So with media mix modeling, you tackle that exact problem. And the way it works is essentially it looks at the relationship between your activity and the output. So to give you an example, let's say that you double your Facebook ads budget and your sales stay exactly the same. Well, that's saying a lot about how little impact Facebook ads has if you can, double it or even shut it down and your sales stay the same. Now, let's say that you double it and then you notice a substantial increase in the number of conversions. Okay, well, that's also saying a lot about the impact that has. Now, if you look at that for the whole world for one day, that's really not enough for you to see patterns. But when you look at that data daily for each of your markets, you learn a lot about what's going on. So, for example, if you double your spend for, say, the New York State, and your sales for New York State increase, and then the next day you decrease your budget for California, and then your sales in California decrease, by looking at, say, for example, your market is the United States. So you're looking at 50 daily observations, and over time that becomes tens of thousands of observations. So with machine learning, you can get very good at figuring out what you're gonna get for every dollar that you invest in each of your channels, and also understand, for example, that if you the return investment you get, for example, if you go from 1,000 to 2,000 a day or 10,000 a day, is not always going to be the same. There's going to be diminishing return. So you want to essentially figure out what's the optimal allocation of your existing budget, what is the best way to invest your next dollar, and after you invest a dollar, what about the next one and the next one? Because different medias are going to get saturated at different points. So by having that level of insight, you can make sure that every dollar that you put into your ads is producing the optimal return on investment.
So, Zeke, where is the role of machine learning AI in all this?
Yes. So you um, if you were a really really smart mathematician and had unlimited time, you could take these 50 daily observations for every single day and essentially figure out the math behind it, and know the calculate the impact. But you have to do that every day, right? Because your performance tomorrow is going to be different than today, and that's going to change even more a month from now, even more a year from now. So you have to like spend all this time doing this yourself, right? With machine learning, you can automate all that. So first, you want to automate all the data ingestion. So you want to make sure that you're already connected to the APIs for Google Analytics, Shopify, all your marketing tools are already being ingested. These models are making predictions, but also they're checking against those predictions. So, for example, if I know that you're going to get $5 for every dollar that you invest in Google Ads, and $2 for every dollar that you invest in Instagram ads, and so on, I if you tell me how much you're going to spend on each of those tomorrow, I should be able to predict what the revenue is going to be. So that's how machine learning works. You make a prediction, you look at the actual results, and then you adjust those predictions moving forward. So it essentially, that's something that no human could possibly do, because we don't have unlimited time, and we run the models. So as a marketer, all you do is sit down behind your computer, look at the results, and just know what decision to make, and have the right tools in place to measure results.
Zeke, now one question that might come to mind is there are like some concerns about, I mean, from marketers perspective, of course I'm talking here, all this crackdowns on the cookies and the privacy, which is, of course, like, don't get me wrong, it's also for the
Yeah.
consumer benefit. But for me as a marketer, like, and the ad, you mentioned also the ad blockers, but everyone knows that the cookies are, the holy grail of everything to collect, what the user is doing, all the attributions. So how this is affecting, collecting the data, and how is also affecting the way we need to plan of on deploying these tools that allows us to collect data from different places.
Well, that's a really good point, right? And um, what's interesting about this, right, is I saw this coming 5 years ago, and that's why we started Data Speaks, because I was realizing that uh, l- you know before the internet, we didn't have the tools to track individual customers. So media mix modeling was the main way to do it. So you had radio, you had TV, you had print. With the internet, that we started believing that by tracking individual users, we will be able to reach the source of truth. Even when before ad blockers, or before when there was anything that could prevent us from tracking individual users, we still have the issue that even with perfect tracking, multiple platforms are taking credit for the same sales. It's based on correlation, not causation. And what I mean by that is that if you get 100 customers a day, and then you hire a promoter to stand outside your shop, just with a sign, and now you get 120 customers a day, the person will tell you that 120 people saw the sign. In reality, that got you 20 incremental customers. And so that tracking is not based on incrementality; it's based on exposure to ads. And the um, we can't infer that just because somebody saw an ad, that's what drove them to buy. I mean, maybe they were going to buy anyway. So because that has made it very very clear, or over the years, that we can't it's becoming more and more difficult to track individual users, I that's what happened like 5 years ago. I saw that on one hand, you had users demanding more privacy, more tools in place, preventing these technologies to work. And then on the other hand, you had all these solutions that were based on this ability to track individual users across the web, across devices, and so on. Um, it was very clear to me at that moment that you couldn't get to your truth when you're fighting against the world and users saying, I don't want you to track me individually. Now, that's the beauty of media mix modeling, is that you don't really need to know the conversion for each individual user to get to the truth. Essentially, what you're measuring is dollars spent on different advertising campaigns and so on outcomes. And so if you invest more and your sales increase, you don't need to know what customers purchase because you spend more. You just need to know that you did this and that this happened. And that's why in some cases, if you what you want to know is the ROI and impact for every channel, media mix modeling is, without a doubt, the best approach. Now, if you do want to understand individual customers, MTA is very good for that. And in some cases, we deploy both. So MTA makes multi-touch attribution makes sense when, for example, if you're B2B and you want to know, let's say you're about to call a prospect and you want to know, for example, that they came to your website, they downloaded this white paper, they saw the pricing page. In that case, I want to know that it's you who did that. And you might have the data for some users, not for other users, but it's important qualitative data, but it doesn't help measure impact. So that's why we say um, for sure you need media mix modeling. If you're investing $25,000 or more per month on advertising, it's a no-brainer. You need to have it. If you also want to know individual customers, also you need MTA. But it's good to know that media mix modeling works even if pixels don't.
Zeke, now the question, because you're mentioning about the budgets and the money, so maybe it's like two questions in one I'm gonna ask you. Um, Especially if they are like kind of a small business, maybe it's still a startup. They gotta say first, like, we don't have data scientists to do all this, and is it going to cost us, as they say in English, arm and leg to do this? Like, is it something which is very expensive to have such system in place? What you can answer maybe business owners or founders who might be thinking this way.
Yeah. So you really have two paths that you can take. You can build your own solution or hire somebody to do it for you. If you're going to build your own solution, you have to budget at least $500,000 per year. You're going to need one data scientist, one machine learning engineer, probably a data engineer, infrastructure, servers, ETL tools, a number of different things. Now, this is a really good option if you are enterprise and want to do this in house. You have maybe some concerns about sharing your data with third parties. So this is a really, really valuable option. And if you're looking for someone who is an expert in Bayesian statistics that has worked with, MCMC models, for example, that's a really good profile to find. But yeah, of course, you have to decide whether or not that's your core competency, and you want to have that as one more thing on your plate. Um, or you could essentially hire a team that does this for you. Of course, we do this. That's our company, Data Speaks. That's everything. All we do, right? We're a team of data scientists from Stanford and MIT that focus on attribution to help marketers make these sort of decisions. But we're not the only ones. So Recast is another really good company that I can recommend. Northbeam does a really good job. There's another one called Measured that is kind of newer to media mix modeling, but they've been around for a while doing incrementality testing. So you have options. And what we what I noticed about all these companies in before we got in the market is that you need to have at least $100,000 a year um, to invest. That's what's going to cost you, and that's a really good option for a lot of companies. But I also realized that um, you know this could be done in a much more cost effective way, making it uh, available to smaller businesses. Which is why we enter the market in this like 4 or 5 years ago. So we wanted to bring a solution that in the past was only available to the big guys, to the rest of us. And what's interesting is that we are now working with a lot of big companies, and servicing both smaller businesses and medium businesses alike.
This is really interesting. Now, one question which I started to ask recently, especially if I'm talking about marketing, right? So, one thing, I'm not sure how Zeke can be tracked. So, nowadays, are starting to see kind of a trend, let's call it, of people instead of going to the traditional places to find things like Google or like any other search engine. So they are going to the LLMs, right? So they are going to ChatGPT, they are going to Claude. Claude maybe doesn't have the internet
Yeah.
connectivity yet at the time of recording. Um, so how can we track that people are coming to my website because they found about me, maybe using Perplexity, or maybe they are using ChatGPT, that, and now Grok, of course. So is there a way to track this?
Yeah, so what we do is we model. The first aspect of our modeling is we want to differentiate between what's advertising and everything else, right? So everything else could include AI searches, search engine optimization. Maybe you're going to trade shows. Maybe you're doing content. All that is doesn't have a cost associated with that. We call that baseline. And essentially, what that means is if you didn't do any ads, what would that be, right? Like what would that look like? What is the number of conversions a day that you have without doing any ads? Uh, and then we can measure what's the incremental number of conversions, or the amount of revenue that you get as you increase your investment for all these different campaigns that you're running. Now, though we do it that way because it's the really the most important consideration you need to make as a marketer is, I have, for example, like $100. What's the optimal way to invest that? I can put 50 here, 20 here. Like, I want to make sure that I'm getting the most optimal outcome from that investment. um but at the same time, we want to model all the other things that are organic. So I'll tell you that one thing that you don't want to do, or I mean, maybe you want to do it, but just take it with a grain of salt, is you can't ask people, right? Like, where do you find us? Because they might just tell you, if they went through 5 different touch points in their journey, they might tell you maybe number two. Maybe, yeah, they saw an ad, but then they listened to a podcast or whatever, right? So you don't know all of that. So even as a consumer, you don't remember, like, what influenced your purchase decisions. So there are a couple of things that you could do. You could ask that question. You could use Google Analytics for last click tracking. And by the way, DataSpeaks takes all the data in, right? Google Analytics data, platform data, all that comes into the platform. But then we work from your source of truth and we say, this is the total number of conversions that you got, rather than letting each platform that doesn't have access to my data figure it out. We do it the other way around. We start from the source of truth. So I think that there's value in anecdotal evidence and asking your clients, especially if you sell, say $100,000 projects rather than a $50 uh, gadget, right? So it makes sense to ask people like where they found you, but just know that they might be unaware of that. So the world is very complex, and no model can track 100% of all the things that could possibly influence a purchase decision. The one problem that we solve is helping you make sure that you get the most from your advertising.
Great. Now, if I want to ask you, because you said like how you predicted 5 years ago. So if I want to ask you to predict the next 5 years in this domain, Zeke, like 5 years is a long time, in my opinion, nowadays. Like a lot
Yeah.
of things can happen. But I mean, in the future, what trends are you seeing, and which ones are like maybe the most excited about?
Yeah, of course. So I think that, with LLMs being so mainstream these days, um, it is really going to change. My prediction is that that's going to change the world more than the internet did. And what I mean by that is, if you have agents that have access to all your data, every email you've ever sent, your company's internal documents, your blog, any client emails that you've ever sent, access to your calendar, and so on, is essentially a replication of your brain. And not only that, but you can fine tune agents to think the way you do. So um, that's gonna be um, in my view, how AI becomes mainstream. You have this foundation, which is the LLMs, and then individual agents that are fine-tuned for the specific things that you want to accomplish with access to your own particular data. So not only are they trained with all the data in the world, but you say, your job is to do this. You have access to everything you need. You know how I work, and every time there's an output, you can fine tune that. So you could say, next time somebody asks about this, don't answer this way, answer this way. So very much like training an employee, but much more effective, because you can replicate that multiple times. It will also have access to a number of different tools, so you can send emails to people. So one of the things we're building right now is, if the performance for a given metric is below a certain threshold, you can send a Slack message to your agency, letting them know, right? So they'll be able to send emails, to searches, use the web. um, so I think that the vast majority of things that you can write into a document for an employee and say, do this, do this, do this, do this, and AI will be able to do. So that's really exciting for me. I think that what I'm most excited about is that um, right now, um, you all the knowledge that we have in our brains as data scientists will be able to be downloaded into a system that will be able to interpret data, answer questions, make recommendations, and um, essentially replace user interfaces with the chatbot, right? So I see a couple of different scenarios. One is, um, if something goes wrong, let me know, right? Um, have the knowledge to identify what things are high priority, low priority, medium priority. Based on that, if something really bad happens, maybe give me a call. If something low priority happens, maybe put it in my project management and assign it to somebody else. So the ability to evaluate issues and take the appropriate action is huge. Of course, the one we all know is the chat bot, where you can ask questions and get answers. Um, but yeah, I think that um, I don't think we've seen any technology in human history that will change the way we do things as much as AI.
Absolutely. And at that fast pace, I would say, like,
Yeah.
I was, maybe I'm repeating myself, but the other day I was telling someone, like I remember when I was still kind of a kid, let's say, when the internet came. So, but yeah, like things, we used to see another breakthrough maybe after 6 7 months, maybe 1 year sometimes, even when the smartphones and like the apps and all this. So like, yeah, there's a new phone every year, right? Now with AI, it's for the first time, like it's sometimes every day. Like I sleep, I wake up, and I see something new, right? Which is fascinating indeed. Um, Dick, as we are almost coming to an end, final, I would say, advice maybe you want to give to uh, entrepreneurs, and maybe also for people who are leaders in marketing, and of course, like where people can get in touch and know more about you, and of course about Data Speaks.
Yeah, of course. So I'll say this, data is power. The more data you have, potentially, the more power you have to make better decisions. And the problem that we have is that we have way more data than we can process, right? So uh, for us, our on average, our clients are processing like 30 million data points every day. There's no way a human can go through that, spot problems, like there's just not enough hours in the day. So just know that uh, their machines are your best friends when they come to that. So if you already are the kind of organization that looks at some data on a regular basis, could be financial data, could be marketing data, you already believe in the value of making informed decisions, in having the tools in place to track whether your decisions get the results you expect or not. um, but you are overwhelmed with the amount of data you have, and you're just not making enough data driven decisions just because it's overwhelming. There's so much of it, and it's impossible. Just know that there's a better way to approach that. And more specifically, when it comes to making sure that you get the highest return on investment, um, the way to think about what we do at Data Speaks is, if you have $100 to invest, right now maybe you have 40 here, 20 here, 25 here, and so on. That's never the most optimal way to do that. There's we can reconfigure that budget, reallocate it in a way that we don't change the total. It's still $100, but we just reallocate it in a more optimal way. And what we found is that usually leads to 20% or more increased efficiency. So the way most companies approach this problem when they want to grow is they throw more money at it. That works, right? Like you can double your budget, something good is going to happen, but it's going to cost you a lot, right? So we want to make sure that you can grow, but you can also be very efficient with every dollar that you put into it. So if that's a problem you have, if you're investing 25K a month or more on ads, you can learn more about us at dataspeaks.ai or find me on LinkedIn. I'm sure we can put the link in the show notes.
Absolutely, Zeke. And this is what I always tell my guests. So, uh, the audience, they don't have to look around. So, if you are listening on your favorite podcasting app, you will find the links in the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll find this, of course, in the description. Zeke, I can't thank you enough for all these insights. I think this is something very interesting for any business, whether they are B2C, B2B, uh, to understand and what you said at that is very very important. Like we have a lot of data that we can act on, but we don't have the manpower to do that. So I would say that this is the most important takeaway today, and of course people should reach out and speak to you and to your team about how you can help them. And thank you all for all the insightful also information that you shared with us today. So really I appreciate that. And this is for the audience, this is how I end my episodes usually. If you are new to the show, thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did so, please give us a thumb up, subscribe, and share it with your friends and colleagues. And if you are one of the people who keeps coming again and again, Thank you for being loyal to us. And thank you for making it to the top 200 charts in multiple countries this year for the first time since I started the show. And also thank you for putting the CTO show as one of the best ranked, most listened business podcasts in Dubai. It's in the top 40. Thank you for made it. And as I say always, stay tuned for a new episode very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mehmet.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.